Hari Om, Namo Namaha. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam niranandam anandam advaita purnam param nirgunam nirvishesham nireham parabrahma rupam danesham bhajema parabrahma rupam danesham bhajema. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome to the 85th session of Bhagavad Gita verse by verse. We continue with the 11th chapter. The team of Param Vedanta will be presenting verses 36 to 40 of Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga. Dr. Hegde will be giving us the key insights. We start with a quick recap of last session by Dr. Divakar, covering verses 31 to 35 of chapter 11. Dr. Divakar.
Thank you. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Arjuna is granted with a temporary Divya Chakshu to visualize Vishwarupa, which is seeing the whole universe as a manifestation of Bhagavan. Arjuna goes through 3 sets of sequential emotional stages on seeing Vishwarupa. First emotion is Vismayaha, wonderment, on seeing the magnitude of the diverse manifestations of the God. This is the good part of the universe. Second emotion is that of intense fear and panic, bhayam. Arjuna starts to get frightened on seeing the God's mouth with tusks, which represents the blazing Kalagni. This mouth was sucking all the warriors and heroes of the Kurukshetra war, including his beloved Bhishma and Dronacharya. Just like the ocean sucking the rivers towards it, or a blazing fire attracting and burning the light insects. Arjuna, on visualizing this, naturally forgets all the previous wonderful things of Vishwarupam and gets preoccupied about the death and the destructive aspect of the Vishwarupam. He gets more worried to see that God was seen as if enjoying destroying everyone. He starts to get his doubt on the very function of the Bhagavan. How can a compassionate God be such a merciless destroyer? This is the very doubt we also get when we lose our near ones, especially if it is a premature death. In the verse 31, Arjuna asks 2 fundamental questions. Kaha bhavan ugra rupaha. Who are you with this fierce form? I have no idea about your function. What is your function? Tava pravrittim nahi prajanami. Arjuna starts to surrender to the Ugra Rupa Darshanam and salutes Bhagavan by calling Devavara, Supreme Lord, and asks for his grace and requests for the gracious, pleasant form of the Bhagavan. With this, Arjuna, out of fear, moves from the phase of Bhayam to Sharanagati. In the verse 32, Bhagavan answers these 2 questions. To the question of who are you, Bhagavan says, Aham pravruddho kalaha. I am the mighty time. I am the Kala Tattvam. Time and space are the integral part of the relative world or Vyavaharika Satyam. In Paramarthika Satyam, in the spiritual plane, there is no time or space. Bhagavan is Kalatita in the Paramarthika Satyam. Bhagavan says he is Kala Tattvam from the Vyavaharika Drushti. Then he talks about his functioning. Function of Kala Tattvam is twofold, which is creation and destruction, Srishti and Laya. In the context of Kurukshetra battlefield, Krishna reiterates the function of Kala as Lokakshaya, the job of destruction, as there is going to be mass casualties. Krishna warns Arjuna, saying that millions of soldiers, animals, etc. from the both camps are going to die, irrespective of whether he decides to fight the war or not. By this, Bhagavan means that Kala Tattvam will consume all of them in the battlefield as their prarabdhas was ending. In the verse 33, Bhagavan calls Arjuna as Savyasachi, meaning an ambidextrous archer who could use his left hand with equal efficiency. Such a warrior is currently doubting his own abilities. So Krishna says, Tvam Uttishta, get up and attain the fame by conquering the enemies and enjoy the prosperous kingdom that you have lost. Krishna says, Nimitta matram bhava to Arjuna. You become a mere instrument in this battle, as Maya ete purvam yeva nihataha. All these soldiers are already destroyed by me. As mentioned earlier, it is the Kala Tattvam of Bhagavan which has determined the destiny of all these fighters in the war. Nimitta Matam Bhava has to be understood properly, as some people will think that everyone is just a puppet or an instrument in the hands of Bhagavan, and therefore everything is already predetermined. Fate is the only thing which governs our life, and there is no free will at all. This is called as fatalism or determinism. They think that there is no choice. Swami Paramarthananda ji explains and clarifies this very clearly and says, Shastras and Bhagavad Gita completely reject determinism or fatalism. On the other hand, Shastras accept that fate influences our life along with the free will. So it is the combination of free will and the fate which determine our life. In fact, it is our own free will. In other words, choice of the actions and its motives which will determine the karma pala. And according to the law of karma, it is the very karma pala which will determine our prarabdha or the fate. Vedas gives all human beings the choice to choose from artha, kama, dharma, and moksha purushartha. All the emphasis and hope is that everyone chooses moksha purushartha. There is no force or threat given to people who choose dharmartha kama. Krishna encourages Arjuna and all of us to use our free will sensibly after getting all the knowledge, including the highest Brahmagnanam. Even at the end of Gita teaching, Bhagavan says, I have taught you the liberating knowledge, but you do what is best for you using your free will. Yatha ichchasi tatha kur. Here, nimitta matram bhava means you become an instrument to the free will of the God. Free will of the God, Avatar Purusha, is dharma samrakshana, by eliminating adharma. So Krishna is asking Arjuna and all of us to align with Shastras and become a conduit with Ishvara Arpana Bhakti in every karma, so that one attains dharma and moves towards moksha. In the verse 34, Krishna further reiterates by specifically calling out the names of Dronacharya and Bhishma, who are very emotionally attached to Arjuna, and says all of them, along with supreme commanders, are already killed as their prarabdhas has ended. Ma Gyatishta, do not worry. Fight this dharma yuddha with a clear mind and you will win this battle. So here is the message to all of us to do our battle, daily karmas, without raga and dvesha, and keeping our values aligned with that of Krishna so that we can win the battle of samsara. In the verse 35, Arjuna understands that Krishna is a karma phaladhata and he has to align his free will with that of Krishna Bhagavan, representing dharma. Arjuna starts to develop bhakti and starts to surrender. But this is also an immature bhakti, as it is born out of fear rather than the full understanding of the God. Sanjaya reports to Dhritarashtra in this verse, Arjuna, after listening to Sri Krishna, offers namaskaram repeatedly out of fear, as he was still trembling after learning that the law of karma is so powerful, and even the best of the warriors are crushed by the law of karma. With the gradual acceptance of the law of karma and by following dharma, fear will disappear and gets replaced by bhakti. Arjuna's expression of bhakti we will see in the subsequent verses. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Divakar, for an excellent recap of the verses that we studied in the last class. And the way you presented is so good that it is worth listening to this once again. Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Pariyantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Dr. Gautam Divakar highlighted particularly about this verse, which was mentioned in the last class, Nimitta Matram Bhavasavya Sachi. This particular verse by Sri Krishna can lead to a lot of misunderstanding if taken out of context, where Krishna clearly says, be a mere instrument. I have already decided what has to be done. But If you can go back to what Dr. Divakar said based on the excellent explanation of Swami Paramatmananda ji, our Shastras give a lot of importance to the glory of being a human being. And the glory of being a human being is that we have a free will. And therefore, the more we exert our free will, the more we have an understanding that I am not other than Bhagavan, then our thoughts, our actions are inclined with that of the divine. Let us be clear about this law of karma, because Swami Paramatmananda ji says, understanding this law is as important as all the efforts that we do for acquiring Brahma Vidya, for a few reasons. In our daily life, we see such a disparity in the world. It looks like the world is unfair. Some people are so blessed, some people are suffering. We see so much suffering in the world, and we do not know how to find meaning for suffering. The law of karma is an answer for all this. In our own lives, we find so many problems. The more understanding of the law of karma can come to a state when, even though I go through all difficulties, I cease to complain. The law of karma also helps you to understand what is this ultimate freedom that we are working for. What is this state called a Jivan Mukti, and why is that if we do not attain to that in our lives, we have the problem of punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. The whole debate now is, am I a victim of fate, or can I exert my free will and thereby be the master of my own life? Our Shastras emphasize again and again that the glory of being a human being is called the Purusharthas, or the Chaturvida Purushartha, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. And thereby, our Shastras give a choice that we can work for each one of them. And of course, particularly, we are here for one purpose, and that is called the Parama Purushartha. All the other Purusharthas are stepping stone to the Parama Purushartha, or Moksha. Having got this birth of human life, having got the opportunity to interact with great teachers, if we miss this opportunity, we miss something phenomenal. All this becomes clear if we have a clear understanding of what is this law of karma. Karma here means action and the results of our action, or the consequence of our action. It is well known that what we sow is what we reap. Thereby, can I be extremely conscious of every thought, every word, every deed, because every action has a certain consequence. The types of karma are three, when we should be very clear about these particular terms, because these things are referred in our Shastras again and again. What is Sanchita karma? The word Sanchita means that which is accumulated. We have lived a number of lives, and in each of these lives, we would have incurred a lot of punya and papa, which have not been used up in that life. Whatever has not been used up is accumulated, and that accumulated punya and papa, which is said to be a huge amount of stored data, and that is called the Sanchita karma. A small portion of that becomes, the term used is fructified, gets matured. Just like you put a certain investment in a fixed deposit, and over a period of time, it matures. That matured punya and papa is what is available for the present birth. And that determines our body, and that determines our present life, that determines our lifespan also, because once that amount of punya and papa is over, this body drops. Being a conscious individual having free will, every thought, every word, every deed that I do can either be a punya or a papa. And thereby every punya can get me benefit, every papa can get me harm. Some of them may be utilized in this present life itself, some of them may not be used. And if this punya and papa are not used in this life, it joins that accumulated punya papa, which is called the sanchita karma. So we are very clear what is sanchita, what is the accumulated. What is available for my present life is called prarabdha. What I do acquire in my present life is called agami. In the beginning of the 8th chapter, Arjuna asks Krishna a series of questions. What is Brahma? What is Adhyatma? What is karma? And that word karma here refers to not the individual karma, it refers to the collective karma. And this collective karma is responsible for the world that we are born in. And a series of questions. And in the second verse, he brings in, who is this Adi Yajna? And Krishna begins to answer. He says, Adi Yajna Aham Eva. Krishna says, I am that Adi Yajna. Now, what is the word Yajna here? Means every action. Every action that I do, is it an action worth punya? Is it worth papa? It requires a very intelligent judge, because you cannot judge an action based on the action alone. If the action is based on, if any action is based on, it is aligned with my with the shastric injunctions, it brings in punya. If it is not aligned, it brings in sorrow for me, it causes papa. Now, some of these actions may not be mentioned in the shastras, and thereby, how do we decide if a particular action brings in punya or papa? It is said more than the action, it is the motive, the intention with which I do this action. Now, who will know that motive? That motive can be known by someone who's the indweller. That indwelling principle is the Adi Yajna. The Adi Yajna, which is Sri Krishna himself within all of us, is the one who's able to decide. What is prarabdha karma? Prarabdha karma, or what is the power of prarabdha karma? You will see how strong fate is in our lives, because prarabdha karma decides the date of my birth, the time of my birth, the place of my birth, what kind of body that I have, my gender, what family I'm born to, what religion, what nationality. Even in my body, am I having a healthy body or a diseased body? What kind of mind, what intellect? And very importantly, there is a term called Vasanas. Vasanas means, every child you will see has certain tendencies. Some are naturally sattvic, some are by nature rajasic, some are very indolent or tamasic. So all these sort of tendencies, the vasanas does not mean our gunas. Vasanas come from the impressions that are stored in the mind based upon our previous actions. Whenever I do an action repeatedly, now I develop a certain skill in that action. And that can be Shubha Vasana or Ashubha Vasana. And I acquire this, some of them from my past life, some of them in my present life. In my present life also, there is a lot of conditioning possible because of my parents, my teachers, my religious leaders, and my government. We think we are free, but our mind is already programmed. In addition, the news media, the advertising, and various people whom we admire because of their skills. It may be a movie star, it could be a sports star. All these people, their lives and their actions have a certain indirect influence on me, and thereby, to a large extent, I could be programmed. I spoke to you about this Adi Yajna. Who is this Adi Yajna? Shri Krishna says, I am the Adi Yajna. Adi Yajna is also called Ishvara. Now, Ishvara, we should be very clear, is a combination of Brahman plus Maya. Brahman, although it is the absolute truth, cannot do anything by itself without the power of Maya. Maya is also the Samashti Karana Prapancha. And with these two, when it comes into combination, you have Ishvara. And Ishvara is the same as Adi Yajna. and which Krishna mentions that I am Adi Yajna, situated within each one of us, who knows the motive with which I do all these actions, and therefore I am in a position to decide whether you deserve a punya or a papa. Now, with this basis, let us be very conscious of every action that I do, because every action can therefore produce punya or papa. Some of them can be classified as drishta and adrishta. Now, supposing I give a certain amount of donation to a charitable organization, what is the drishta or the visible part that from my account certain amount has been deducted, which has gone to the other account? What is the adrishta part? The adrishta part is that there is a certain punya that has come into my account, and this punya should bring in happiness. Similarly, if I do something wrong, there is going to be papa that is going to become sorrowful, which may be drishta immediately, or it may be adrishta. That means I do not see it, but it can be matured a little later on. Quickly, let us look at what is the advantage of knowing the law of karma. In this world, we see a lot of disparity. Some people so blessed, some people not so blessed. Is life unfair? Now we know all this is because of prarabdha karma. In my own life, I see a lot of difficulty. But if I understand that every difficulty, every sorrow that I am going through, I am only responsible. I don't blame Ishvara. Ishvara is an unbiased judge. And therefore, the more I take acceptance, my faith in God is not affected. More importantly, I know my future is dependent on the actions I do today. And so I'm going to be responsible for every thought, word, and deed that I do today, so that my future is going to be better. We also sometimes have this fundamental doubt. I see so many good people suffering. And why is that so many corrupt people, people who do a lot of atrocities, seem to have a good thing, seem to have a great time in life? So to recapitulate some of these things, if I have a proper understanding of the law of karma, there is a certain attitudinal shift. And this attitudinal shift will bring out a certain amount of cognitive changes. And with this cognitive changes, my life is going to be more pleasant. In what way? I will now understand, I will not say that life is not fair. When I see disparity in life, some people so blessed, some people not so blessed, now I understand it is part of prarabdha karma. Not that I am going to be indifferent, I will still do whatever I can, but I know that life is not unfair. Again, this question now will stop. Why me? Because I take responsibility for all the difficulty in my life. And I know I'm not going to blame anybody. One of the index of a spiritually mature person, the more you grow spiritually, you will see, even though a person seems to be harassed by somebody in life, the person has virtually no complaints, because the person knows, I'm not going to blame the messenger. This difficult person in my life who's troubling me is like a postman who's delivering the courier to you, good or bad. And therefore, I should not blame the messenger. I have to understand this is part of my karma. I will not complain. And this is a tremendous evolution in the spiritual path. We hear again and again of people losing faith in God when they are going through a lot of personal suffering. But if a person understands the law of karma, you will see the Lord is now an unbiased judge. And therefore, if the judge offers a certain amount as punishment, it is something that I deserve, and I will be able to accept this punishment with due regard, because it is my action, and God can never, never be unjust. I take responsibility for the future. My present actions in all the three domains, in thought, word, and deed, will determine my future. Therefore, very importantly, I will not accept, I know prarabdha is very strong, but still I know I have a free will, and my free will can overcome prarabdha to a large extent. And see, my past karma is also my karma. My present free will determines my present karma. And therefore, Past is over, but what I can do can determine my life and the life of people around me. So this question is now answered. How is that many good people suffer and people who are living in a life full of atrocities are seem to us to have a good time? The answer is the present ethical person is suffering because of past unethical action, and also the currently corrupt atrocity inducing person is enjoying because of good actions in the past. Therefore, the rule is ethical actions will bless us, unethical actions can cause harm. And finally, let us understand why are we in a spiritual path. We are here for Brahma Vidya, for Atma Vidya, to know our true self. This is what the Bhagavad Gita promises. Jnanagni sarva karmani basmasat kurute tata. Once there is jnanam, just like radiation can burn cancer cells, the power of jnanam is such that all my accumulated sanchita karma of all my past life can be destroyed. This is great news. Second is, once I am nimitta matrena bhavasavya sachi. That means once I become so aligned to dharma, I am so aligned to the higher forces, I have no agenda of my own. There is no ego. And when there is no ego, I am not going to incur future punya or papa. This comes in so many verses. Buddhi yukto jahatiha ube sukrute dushkrute. Such a person who is so aligned because of Brahma Vidya, buddhi yukta. There is no more punya or papa. A jnani is now left with prarabdha karma. He can go through cancer, he can go through physical suffering, he can go through any amount of physical pain. But such a jnani, what happens is now identifies himself with the Atma and sees his body mind as some body. So it is not directly his body. He may be experiencing pain, but he chooses not to suffer. And this is the glory of the understanding of the law of karma. With this background, let us enter the class today. Verse 36 will be explained to us by Dr. Sachin. Dr. Sachin, please.
Hari Om. Om Gurubhyo Namaha. The verse goes like this. Arjuna uvacha stane rishikesha tava prakirtya jagat praharsha tanut anurachyate cha rakshamsi bhitani disho davanti sarve namasyanti cha siddha sangha. So here we can see the complete surrender by Arjuna. He is mentioning that the Lord's form, Rishikesha, is actually in the world Jagat. People are actually delighted and grateful to the glorification of Lord. But at the same time, some people like demons are frightened. Rakshamsi bhitani. And they are running in helter-skelter. Disho dravanti. But in the same time, the people who are broad-minded, who have understood Lord in totality, the Siddhas, the Siddha Purushas, they bow down. Namasyanti cha Siddha Sangaha. This is the meaning. We will try to get into the words and the meaning proper. So the next slide, please. So this stage begins the surrender stage of Arjuna. And this is very important. Next slide, sir. Why surrender? Surrender because mostly we surrender to fear. That's what happened even in the second chapter in the beginning. Arjuna was very fearful because he saw the near and dear ones in the battlefield and he was surrendering to Lord. And he did not know what to do. In the confusion, he asked, Lord, what should I do? But here Arjuna is surrendering and he's showing the first signs of understanding the Lord's totality, understanding of the universal law of karma. In the next slide, we see how to overcome this fear. The best way to overcome this fear is to not depend on the world. Keep it as the cardboard chair we keep in for showcase, but don't lean on it. World dependence to God dependence. Only through the expansion of mind and appreciating the totality, which Arjuna here has appreciated, then we overcome this fear. But how to achieve this expansion, we'll see in the next slide. It is achieved by understanding the Nirguna Brahma. That is possible through removing all our ahamkara. Just now, sir gave us example of ego, how to remove all the ego. Swamiji also speaks about how to remove all the ego, ahamkara, which can be only removed by maturing the ego. The stage of Vishwarupa Darshanam alone, understanding God as totality alone, will remove our ahamkara. In the next slide, this mantra, Mrityunjay mantra, Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Prushtivartanam Urvarukam Iva Bandhanat Mrityor Mukshyam Yamam Amrutat. So here, what is mentioned is all the students of Vedanta, even the most learned, would have the small ahankara with them. So let that be transcended by Vishwarupa Darshanam, and ahamkara then would ripen and fall off. Just like the cucumber, Urvarukam Iva Bandhanat, will fall off after ripening and would not leave any telltale signs of life or attachment. That's how we should leave this world. But there are ways to, in the next slide we'll see, there are ways to have samsara nivritti. There are methodology which in 15th chapter we'll see. Lord himself explains the 4 sadhanas, out of which the most important is Sharanagati. Only when you surrender to the divine, then you get the grace and you move forward to the moksha. The other 3 are Vairagyam, Brahma Vichara, that is Shastra Vichara we are doing, and Sadguna. In the last slide, we see that only through right identification we'll get this maturity which Arjuna has at this moment. When we are seeing ourselves as limited to a father or uncle or a grandpa, then we have this problem of samsara, wrong identification. We will be happy, but we are also fearful about what would happen to this family members or near ones. But when we have entire understanding of law of karma and see the Vishwarupa, and it should be seen as a totality of the Lord. There is no good or bad. There is no pleasure or pain. The Ishvara is sum total of everything. Then we move to the next stage, which at present Arjuna is. Everything is subtotal of Lord. And finally, we lose through this understanding the Ahamkara and Mamakara, and then we move towards the zero identification, which is moksha, which gives us the permanent happiness, peace, and security. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Sachin, for a nice explanation of this verse with highlighting of Sharanagati. Come back to the scene of 11th chapter where Arjuna has gone through 3 important stages. Initially, one of Vismaya and wonderment, then of intense fear, and finally he has come to the state of Sharanagati. As we study the Bhagavad Gita, you will see there are 2 or 3 important things that the Bhagavad Gita gives in the 3 Shatkams. In the Prathama Shatkam, it gives that if you want to attain Brahma Vidya, we have to put effort. Prayatnam is given a lot of importance in the first 6 chapter. In the next 6 chapter, what is given importance is the ability to access grace. And the way to access grace is through Sharanagati. It is through these verses that you get through the understanding of Sharanagati. The grace of the Shastras, the grace of the Guru, and the grace of the Lord is available for all. But are we putting our solar panels open to be able to download them? As we go into the 3rd Shatkam, then it comes to the topic of Sadgunas. Because unless these 3 things are there, that means our prayatnam, our ability to access grace through Sharanagati and through Sadguna, Brahma Vidya will still be a distant dream. Dr. Meenal will explain verse 37. Dr. Meenal, please.
Thank you, sir. Namaste. We have seen in the previous verses that in response to the Vishwarup Darshan by Sri Krishna, Arjuna undergoes the following stages in succession: Ashcharyam, Bhayam, and now from verse numbers 35 onwards up to verse number 45, Arjuna is experiencing the stage of Sharanagati or Bhakti. Let us read the 37th verse. Kasmachatena nameran mahatman kariyase brahmanopyadi kartre Ananta devesha jagannivasa tvamaksharam sad satat param yat. In this verse, Arjuna continues his prayer to the Vishwarup cosmic form of Sri Krishna and says that it is very natural and instinctive for a sadhaka who appreciates God's glory in totality in form of Vishwarupa to do a namaskara. The more a sadhaka sees God's totality, the more is his or her vinaya or humility. Also, science and divinity are very closely related. While studying any science, be it biology, entomology, astronomy, or medicine, etc., we cannot help but get wonderstruck at the beauty of creation. And one who has wonderment for any science will naturally develop bhakti or devotion. In this verse, Arjuna says, Kasmat chatena nameran mahatman. Why won't people become your devotees? If they are sensitive or have God realization, they will certainly become your devotee and realize how great you are. They will learn to appreciate God's glory all around them. He further says, Gari ase brahmano api adi kartre. O Lord, the greatest one, you are the creator of even Brahmaji, who is supposed to have created all of us. It is to be noted here that Brahmana here indicates Brahmaji and not the absolute truth or Brahman. The Puranas mention that Brahmaji was born out of a golden lotus arising out of Lord Vishnu's navel, and that is also why Lord Vishnuji is called Padmanabha. In Vedantic terminology, this symbolism of Brahmaji arising from Vishnuji's navel is very symbolic. Here, Ishvara or Lord Vishnu represents the Samashti Karana Shariram, also called as Chaitanya, while Brahmaji represents the Samashti Sukshma Shariram, also called as Pratibimba Chaitanya, while the universe and all the matter that is created by Brahmaji is the Samashti Sthula Sharira. This means that the Samashti Sthula Shariram is born out of Samashti Sukshma Sharira, which is Lord Brahmaji, and which in turn is born out of Samashti Karana Sharira, that is Lord Vishnu. And this makes Lord Vishnu Adi Purusha or Adi Karta, as this verse mentions. The further in this verse, Arjuna says, Ananta Devesha Jagan Nivasa. Ananta, you are the infinite one. So can we go back to the previous slide? The one before this. Yeah. Before this, sir, please. Thank you. You are the infinite one, Ananta, because time and space exist in you. You do not exist in time and space. Devesha, one who is the Lord of all gods, Jagan Nivasa, you are the abode of the universe. You do not live in the universe lives in you. Tvam Aksharam Sad Satat Param Yat. You are Karya Rupa, you are Karana Rupa, and also Karya Karana Vilakshanacha, meaning you are the cause, you are the effect, but you are also beyond both. To understand this better, let us take the example of clay. A lump of clay is the Karana Rupa or the causative material for the Karya Rupi clay pot or the clay toy, which are here the finished products or the effect. While the all-pervading space in which the clay lump was contained and which also pervades the clay pot or the clay toy was and will always be there. This space is neither a direct Karan nor a Karya Rupa or effect, but pervades both. In the same manner, God is both the cause and the effect, but still remains beyond both cause and the effect. Because God is everything. In other words, God is beyond both the manifest as well as the unmanifest, because He alone is the supreme source of energy and creation, but yet remains distinct from and beyond either. What this verse tells us is that seeing and understanding God in totality enables us to envision God as being impartial, not a just God or an unjust God. Knowing this totality removes fear, fear of loss, fear of disease, fear of death, and elicits bhakti or sharanagati in a sadhaka. We only get what we deserve due to our karma phalams and prarabdha. God is the karma phaladata. The sadhaka should pray for strength to accept this prarabdha rather than blaming God. And once this is understood, the fear and immaturity is replaced by devotion and maturity. And to such a mature sadhaka, doing a namaskara, that is surrendering ego, taking sharanagati to that Adikarta, Ananta, Devesha, Jagan Nivasa God will come naturally. Thank you very much. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Meena. Enjoyed listening to you because it was a very delightful flow of expression of a person who has understood this verse. And sometimes when you come to the state of Sharanagati, when you want to describe the Lord and you have no words to describe, verses like these give us some ideas, some words, how to describe the glory of the Lord. As part of the explanation of the verse, you told us clearly about the three levels of creation, from the Karana to the Sukshma to the Samashti. Karana being Ishvara, Sukshma, Samashti, represented by Brahmaji, the Adi Deva, the firstborn, to the present creation. These are all in our Tattva Bodha, which we need to be very clear if you have to understand verses like this. And finally, there is which something that you explain, difficult to understand, how Brahman is beyond Karya and Karana, beyond cause and effect. I'll give you an example if you are able to understand it. Now, all of us dream, and when we dream, I create a dream world and I create a dream body. So I create a dream world. I am the Karana of my dream, and the dream world is my effect or the Karyam. But the real me is somebody even greater than the dream world and the creator of that dream world. I am Karya Karana Vilakshana. The consciousness in me is something even higher than this mind work of creating a dream body and a dream world. The next verse, verse 38, will be explained to us by Dr. Sanjay Mehrotra. Dr. Sanjay, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. In introduction to the verse 38 of this chapter, and we have discussed it even before, Arjuna, who was overpowered by the fear when he saw the destructive Kalatattvam, and he also doubted the all-compassionate nature of Krishna and understood that the Lord is neither compassionate nor not compassionate or have likes or dislikes. He is unaffected, unattached. After understanding this, Arjuna, in place of fear, gets the devotion or the Sharanagati, which we have heard many times in the expressions of the previous verses. We also know that the Lord represents the law of karma. His job is to maintain the order of the creation. Next slide, please. So the verse goes, and he is now praising Lord Krishna. Tvam adideva purushaha puranaha, tvam asya vishwasya param nidhanam, veta asi vedyam cha param cha dham, tvaya tatam vishwam anantarupa. The meaning, Adideva, you are the primal God. Purana Purusha, Purana means old, ancient Purusha. Tvam param nidhanam, and you are the supreme ground of dissolution. Nidhanam means where things stay. Asya vishwasya, this Vishwa, this universe. Asiveta, you are also the knower. Vedyam cha, the known. Cha dham. Dham means where everything is resting or the abode. Param, which is beyond. Vishwatattvam, the universe is pervaded by you, O Lord, with endless form. So now he is describing the nature of Krishna, which is showing him the endless forms. You are the primal God, the ancient Purusha. You are the supreme ground of dissolution of this universe. You are the knower, the known, as well as the abode, which is beyond. Both the universe is pervaded by you, O Lord, with endless forms. Next slide, please. So Arjuna is expressing his devotion by calling him Adideva, the first and the foremost God. Also calls him Purusha. Purusha, which is a very commonly used terminology in the Sankhya philosophy, the all-pervading one, which also represents the Brahman, dweller in every human body. Purana. Purana, of course, means the ancient ones. Tamasya Vishwasya Param Nidhanam. You are the ultimate ground into which the whole creation dissolves or resolves. The Srishti and the creation of the universe and the resolution, which is the pralayam we know about. Vettasi vedyam cha. You are the knower of everything. You are every living being, which is the experiencer of the world. Bhokta jiva. We know what is the real experiencer, what is the real sakshi in us, is that sentience, that Atman, which is the representative of the divinity, which is the macro form called as the Brahman. We are small parts of that Brahman, which makes us sentience. Next slide, please. Param Chadham. Dhama means Chaitanya, the Turiya Chaitanya you are, in which all the knowers as well as the object of knowledge, the Karana state of gross and subtle, which was discussed in the previous verse by Dr. Minal. Tvayam Tattvam Vishvam Vishwamanantarupa. O Lord, the entire universe is pervaded by you. He is the Anantarupa. O Vishwarupa Ishvara. So now in this particular verse, Arjuna has started describing the characters and details about the Krishna's form, which made him understand what is he. So far he used to think that he is his friend, but now he understands the real form of Krishna, and that's where the bhakti comes. So once you know the real nature of you and the real nature of what Brahman or his representative, which Krishna is, you get the bhakti. So bhakti is a natural dissolution of all your jnanagni as a devotion, and that is what this verse is describing. Hari Om Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay, for another very lucid explanation of a very difficult verse. It is certainly a difficult verse which can be understood only with a good background of the Upanishads. With very nice slides. I would like to focus on this Vetasya Vedyam. You are both the knower of everything. That means I am the knower. At the same time, I am the known. How can you be both? As we enter into the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is titled Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga. The first step in Vedanta is also called Drik Drishya Viveka or Kshetra Kshetrajna Viveka. That means I am the experiencer of the whole world, and the whole world is Kshetra. I am the Kshetrajna. I am also called the Drik, the knower, and the whole world is Drishyam. So initially we make a distinction that there is a world of experiences around me, and I am the knower of the experiences. And the knower can never be the known in this level of reality called Vyavahara. But when we go to a higher level of reality, you will see that you are beyond the knower and known. You are both the knower and the known. How is that possible? I will go again to the dream example. In dream, I, through my thoughts, create a wonderful dream world, and I create a dream body. So this dream body is the knower. The dream world is the knower of, is the world of experiences. So you can see there is a world of experiences, and you will see there is the dream body who knows that world. But I am beyond the knower and known. I am both, because I am that consciousness which includes both. We will understand that as we come to the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Verse 39 will be explained to us by Jyoti Karthik. Over to you, Jyoti.
Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Vayuryamognihi varuna shashankaha prajapatistvam prapitamahascha namo namastestu sahasrakritvaha punascha bhuyopi namo namaste. Arjuna says, you are the Lord of air, Lord of death, Lord of fire, Lord of water, presiding deity of the moon, Prajapati, and the ultimate great-grandfather, the creator. 1,000 repeated salutations to you. Again and again indeed, repeated salutations to you. While you see the word meanings on the slide, in the next slide, the essence of this entire shloka is Arjuna telling Lord Krishna that you are everything. What is the logic in the statement of Arjuna? Next slide, please. To elaborate, in the 7th chapter itself, Krishna has introduced that Bhagavan is the Karanam and the whole creation is the Karyam. And we know the fundamental law that the Karanam alone appears in the form of manifold Karyam. Cause alone, with different names and forms, appears as various effects. Just as one gold alone with different names and rupas appears as different forms of ornaments. There are no ornaments separate from gold. There are no furniture separate from wood. There are no waves and oceans separate from water. Generalizing, there are no products separate from cause, and the cause being God. There are no creations other than God. Therefore, God alone is in the form of Akasha, Agni, Vayuhu, Apaha. This is called Arambanadi Karana Nyaya. To conclude, effects do not exist separate from cause. Or to put it in another way, cause alone appears as manifold effects. The Prajapatis are early sages who formed societal codes and made further procreation so that theirs and future generation coexist in a civilized way. They are considered as Lord Brahma's mind-born sons or Manasa Putraha. There are 14 Prajapatis. The Trimurtis, Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara are the earliest Prajapatis. Then there were Rishis who produced codes for societal living, coexisting, marriage, rearing of children, learning from nature, ways of producing food and consumption, storage, learning to appreciate nature and its laws, and living in harmony. And therefore, Arjuna says, you alone are those Prajapatihi. And then the Pitamaha also. All the 14 Prajapati are born out of Pitamaha Brahmaji. That is not there in the verse. We have to supply and we have to understand that. You are one Brahma, not 14. Brahmaji himself is born of Vishnu's navel. So Brahmaji is the Pitamaha. Vishnu becomes what then? Prapitamahascha. He becomes the Prapitamaha, and which means he is also the father of Brahmaji. So Arjuna here, in his true understanding, indicates the infinite, the source of all potentialities, as the Lord and nothing other than Krishna, the infinite. You are the Prajapati, you are Brahma, you are Vishnu, and therefore, what do I want to do? What can I do? Namo namastestu. I offer my namaskaras thousands of times. I offer namaskarams to you, still I'm not satisfied. That is what he says in this shloka. Again and again, I offer namaskarams to you. Because the more I think of your greatness, the more I feel like offering namaskaras to you. Arjuna is still not satisfied despite this. His Shraddha is so great and so much devotion has been invoked in him that he wants to do something. But he can't do more than prostrating before the Lord. What more can he do? The Bhagavan does not need anything else or doesn't want anything else. That is the essence of this shloka. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Jyoti, for explanation of another verse where Arjuna is at a loss how to describe the Lord. And in this verse, he says, you are everything. You are the air, you are the Lord of death, you are fire, you are water, you are the presiding deity of the moon. You are everything. Everything includes everything that is seen and everything that is manifest and unmanifest. So here you will see that Arjuna is at a loss of words to express something that is inexpressible. And sometimes we can use all these words when we are so full of devotion to express our devotion to the Lord. Thank you, Jyoti. We go to the next verse, which will be explained to us by Nilima. Over to you, Nilima.
Jai Gurudev. After having divine vision of the Absolute, at once both wondrously sublime and fearfully dreadful, wherein all beings continuously rolling into the omnipresent blessed light of spirit. Having such divine vision, an awakened man completely surrenders to the divine will and acts as a mere instrument, becomes a representative devotee. Such ecstatic devotion is essential for God's realization. Let us say the words. Namah purastadata prushtataste. Namostu te sarvata eva sarva. Anantaviryam amita vikramasvam. Sarvam samapnoshi tatosi sarvaha. Meaning, salutations to thee before and behind. Salutations to thee in all sides. Boundless in power and measureless in strength. Thou art pervading all. Thou art all. Here, next slide. Arjuna's heart, filled with devotion, spoke these words. Namah Purastat, salutations to you in front of me. Also, Ada Prustataste, salutations, who is behind me. Namostute, salutations to you. Sarvata Eva Sarva, who is everywhere. Ananta Viryam, who is endowed with infinite energy. In instances where Lord Hanuman lifting the mountain or Adishesha supporting the Mother Earth, their strength is limited by space. Yogis too take many forms. Even Ravana or demons in different situations took many forms, but limited by time. But Lord's strength is unparalleled, who is present everywhere at all times. Absolute truth is immeasurable in strength. Lord's power is infinite. We can only get a faint glimpse of such infinite Lord's power. Just like ants attempt to fathom the depth of the ocean. Amita Vikramastva, Lord is bestowed with heroic actions. Sarva Samapnoshi, Lord envelop everything. He is the essence like space. He is all-pervading pure consciousness. Dwells everywhere in everything in all the beings. Tatosi Sarvaha, in fact, Lord alone is in all the names and forms. Lord's power is infinite. Realizing this, rational man knows he's nothing and one's ego completely vanishes. One surrenders to God just as Arjuna did in this situation. Devotee sees the Lord everywhere, manifesting his mysterious power in miraculous manner. One surrenders to Lord, offer one's adoration and worship. Thus thinking of the Lord, one attains the Supreme. Contemplating the divine, he becomes the divine. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you, Nilima, for a nice explanation of this verse where Arjuna's heart is filled with devotion and he wants to offer salutations. And when you want to offer salutations to something that is so vast and so big, you will see words essentially become meaningless. You can offer salutations to something vast in front, but how can you go behind and do salutations? And he also uses these words, you who are everywhere, you who are all encompassing. When you have encompassed me also, there is no sense of direction. But as you will see, this is a heart expressing devotion of intense salutations. As we go to the next class, we come to a new set of verses. And in these new set of verses, we have Arjuna going through a series of regrets. The regret is, oh Krishna, I never knew your glory. I never knew your greatness. I thought you were somebody so ordinary. And then I took you for granted. I've made jokes on you. I've sometimes put my leg on you. So we will hear that on the next class. And we will hear the chanting by Kumari Anjana of these words in class today. Anjana, please.
Hari Om. Arjuna Vacha Sthane Hrishikesh Tava Prakirtya Jagat Prahrushyatyanurajyate Cha Rakshanti Bhitani Disho Dravanti Sarve Namasyanti Cha Siddha Sanghaha Kasmachate Nannameran Mahatman Gariyase Brahmanopyadi Kartre Ananta Devesha Jagannivasa Twamaksharam Sadasata Tatparam Yata त्वमादिदेवः पुरुषः पुराणः त्वमस्य विश्वस्य परं निधानं वेत्तासि वेद्यं च परं च धाम त्वया ततं विश्वमनन्तरूपा वायुर्यमोऽग्निवरुणश्च शाङ्कः प्रजापतिस्त्वं प्रपितामहश्च नमो नमस्तेऽस्तु सहस्रकृत्वः पुनश्च भूयोऽपि नमो नमस्ते नमः पुरस्तादत पृष्ठतस्ते नमोऽस्तु ते सर्वत एव सर्वा अनन्तवीर्यामितविक्रमस्त्वं सर्वं समाप्नोषि ततोऽसि सर्वः हरि ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम.
Thank you, dear Anjana, for the chanting of the verses. Your practice inspires us to do the same. We have clearly moved further in our understanding from the Lord as just the intelligent cause to we now understand Ishvara as the material cause of the world also. He is the knower as well as the object, the experiencer and the experience. Since the Lord is all pervading, we don't have to travel to see God. He is never away from us. Therefore, every action must be an act of devotion. We must accept all our pain and suffering as His grace. It is an opportunity to purify ourselves. The Lord is sculpting us at that point. We are grateful to our gurus for helping us understand these verses so well. Thank you, sir, for the detailed explanation of the law of karma. Definitely, we need to revisit that. Our sincere gratitude to all the speakers of Team Param Vedanta, and thank you, dear listeners. Our next session is on Monday, 7th March at 6:45 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Dhanyavad. Namo Namaha.